Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning to all of you. My name is Imran Muhammad Rashid, a research fellow at Islamic Renaissance Front, and on behalf of IRF, I would like to welcome all of you today to be here in this Sunday morning. Again, you know that Sunday is one of those days where, it's always complicated at the very beginning because you have a very close relationship with your bed. But then we have this particular numbers in the room. I think it's fair to say that it's a Sunday miracle in a way that we be able to put together a good crowd for wonderful sessions we're going to have today. So this regional public forum is on the role and the futures of religion in politics. This is organized in conjunction with a regional conference that we have the last 2 days on Political Islam. The full title is Contesting the Legacies of Political Islams, the Past, the Present, and the Future. And we are very honored to have distinctive panelists, speakers, to accompany us for the last 1 day. We have Prof. James Picastori, we have Prof. Jeffrey Kenny, we have, of course, our very own Dr. Azhar Ibrahim and Dr. Faisal Musa. And I'm happy to report that for the last 1 day, it has been a lovely, wonderful, productive discussions. And what a better ways to end such a wonderful conference by concluding that with a wonderful forum, a public forum, that is today. Just a couple of announcements before we start. The session is going to start at 9:30, and we have lunch afterwards. So please stay over here, outside. Please stay to celebrate the spirit of Malaysian cultures where for every occasion we have foods afterwards. Indonesians don't feel jealous about this. So without further ado, I would like to pass the session to Dina Zaman, our esteemed moderator today, to conduct the session. Thank you very much.
Very good morning, everyone. I'm Dina. I'm from Iman Research. I'm the moderator for today. So basically what I'll do is I'll briefly introduce you to the panelists, and then each one will have about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes of presentation. I'm a very strict timekeeper because I know everybody wants to get to the meat of the panel to discuss. Then we'll have a short discussion, and then we're going to open it to the floor, yeah? So are you all awake? Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so let me just briefly introduce to my furthest right. Yeah? Okay. Would be Datuk Dr. Ahmad Farouk Musa, who is the founder and director of Islamic Renaissance Front, IRF, an intellectual movement and think tank promoting reform and renewal in Islam, democracy, good governance, and human rights. He's also actively involved in civil society and the emerging discourse on post-Islamism. Next one would be Professor James Piscatori, who's a current deputy director and professor at the ANU, the Australian National University, Centre for Arab and Islamic Studies. Prior to holding this post, he was chair of the School of Government and International Affairs at Durham University, a fellow of the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, and fellow of Wadham College, Oxford, and president of International Politics in the University of Aberystwyth. Last but not the least would be Professor Jeffrey Kenny, who's a professor of religious studies at DePaul University. He has a PhD in religious studies from the University of California, Santa Barbara. His research and publications have focused on modern Islam in Egypt, with special attention to Islamist politics and religious discourse in public life. So without further ado, I believe all of you prepared? Yes? Okay, so we'll begin with Dr. Ahmad Farouk Musa.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning to everyone. The topic today is very interesting and important as well because it's the role and the future of religion in politics. I've had people who are interested from Sabah to come, and I don't know whether they're coming or not, and a few others. I had to ask them to follow us on Facebook Live, and I hope that the Facebook Live is on now, and we can start this important topic to discuss. Basically, we had basically heavy dose of this political Islam for the past 2 days. And one whole century of political Islam from Professor James Piscatori. Yeah. So I would would start by saying that, like what I said earlier on, that the whole idea of political Islam basically rests in this dictum called ad-din wa dawlah, right? And if you look at this in the Quran itself, the word ad-din appears 79 times in the Holy Quran. And Fazlur Rahman, yesterday I think I told Prof. James and Prof. Kenny that in ISTEC we had this library, Fazlur Rahman's library at ISTEC, and if you are interested to read about to look at his collection of books, his letters, personal letters, you can go to ISTEC, yeah? And he says that it is like a way to be followed, or to use the word by Professor James Pescatore, is Weltanschauung, the way of life, right? Yeah. And but the thing is that this whole idea of political Islam is that the belief that the foremost agenda in this idea of advocating this political Islam is basically to establish an Islamic state. And because in the end, Malaysians are very well aware of the Islamists in past, especially, they are promoting what I would say as raison d'être, yeah, the reason of their existence. That is to implement hudud, and without an Islamic state, you can't implement hudud, right? You can't implement hudud in our country now because it is against the constitution. So they need to establish an Islamic state. So the problem with this whole idea of Islamic state, like Professor Piscatori had mentioned to us about this, a long time ago, Al-Mawardi, he wrote Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyah. And in this idea of Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyah is that basically there are two sets of kafir, right? There's kafir over there. One is Zimmi and one is Harbi. And you heard that how some muftis in Pahang and so on had basically, put this label of Harbi on their political opponent, on DAP, for example. So probably MCA is Zimmi and DAP is Harbi. Probably, I don't know. So that's the idea of what they have now. And the thing of this Zimmi and Harbi is that if you look at Al-Hakam al-Sultaniyah, it's a text riddled with this, how do I say, very, it shows a Muslim supremacy at that time. To say that if you are Zimmi, you can't be riding horses or you can't be riding donkeys in the city limits, within the city limits. Probably if you look at the 21st century, it's like preventing the non-Muslims from driving cars within the city limits. So if you want to go to KLCC, you can't drive car if you're Zimmi, all right? You have to walk. And I read the text, the translated text of this Al-Hakam al-Sultaniyah. It says that, like if they have to pay the jizya, right? They have to pay jizya. They call it jizya. It's kind of taxation upon the Zimmis. If you want to pay jizya, you can't go by riding your horses or your donkeys or anything like that. You have to walk. Not only you have to walk, but you have to walk with your head down. Lower down your head and walk. So can you just imagine if you're going to pay your taxes now and you have to go to LHDN at Jalan Duta near my house, and you have to do that. So that's the whole idea of in Al-Hakam al-Sultaniyah. Some might not agree. Dr. Aslam, maybe you might not agree with what I say, but that's the thing that I've read, and that's, even if you look at the past, many years ago, past wrote about this idea of Islamic State. It was basically a copy and paste from Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyah into the past Negara Islam, right? Yeah. Okay. Then, if you look at this current discourse in Malaysia, of course, the idea is that the obsession of these Islamists with the idea of hudud, and that they say that this hudud is divine. because it is based on Sharia, and because of that it has this divinity in it. To be honest, I think that the issue about this is a fallacy. To say that hudud laws are divine laws, to me is a fallacy. Because hudud is extrapolation based on human reasoning, right? The fuqaha, the jurists, they came up with the extrapolation from the Sharia, the divinity, the Sharia laws in the Quran itself. So meaning to say, you cannot find anywhere in the Quran, right? Even though the Quran says about the, what you call, you have to amputate the hands of thieves, for example. But you can't find anywhere what's the limit, right? 1,000, 2,000, 1 million, 2 million. You can't find that. And you can't find the details of it. And the issue that I've been arguing is that in the modern context, people don't steal like that, right? We have heard of the greatest kleptocrat in history. How did he steal? It was from the megabytes of the computer, right? Would that fall under hudud laws? I do not think so, right? So that's the issue. Now, if someone who stole a motorbike cost 2,000 ringgit, for example, or 5,000 ringgit, then he would be punished under hudud laws. But those who stole 50 billion or more would scot-free because it's just based on the megabyte of the computer, right? It's not stealing per se. And of course, as I've argued before, that the thing is that when you say it's divine, then you can't criticize it because it's as if you are criticizing God, right? That's the issue. The problem is that is kind of being insulated from any sort of criticism, and I think that is not good in a democratic country. If somebody says that no, you can't criticize this, no, because this is God's laws, when in fact it is not, then there's going to cause a lot of problem. And as I said just now, it's sort of people say that it's been mandated by God, these laws, right? You cannot criticize it and the thing. But to me, as I've said here, that Sharia must neither be privileged nor enforced as a source of state law or public policy simply because they believe to be the will of God. Now, the issue now, the main problem that I'm going to go after presented the groundwork for my talk is that, is it possible to have Muslim politics without an Islamic state? That's a more important and relevant question to be answered, right? Is it possible? So to me, I don't know about Prof and Prof Kenny, what you think, but to me, the idea is possible if we look at the Tunisian experience by Rashid Ghanouchi, right? I prefer Tunisian experience as compared to AKP, the Turkish experience. You might debate about it, but I prefer this this Tunisian experience because Rashid Ghanouchi, he had lived in exile in London. Yeah, I spoke to him when he was in exile in London. I spoke to him over the phone. The thing is that he came up with this idea. How he managed. Of course, there was he evolved, right? If you read the book by Azam Tamimi, A Democrat Within Islamism, then you see how he evolved, his thinking and the way he thinks that after living in the West, in England, he believed that it's better to live in this kind of state as compared to live in a utopian Islamic state, right? So he came up with this idea of what he considers as al-faragat, or spaces, right? Spaces. In these spaces is that he's trying to differentiate between two types. One is what he termed as ad-dini, or something which is sacred, basically the space of religion or ibadah, aqidah and ibadah, and the other one is what he called as as-siyasi, the profane, the political, right? He says that, if you look at the scope of ad-dini, of course, everything is there, right? You cannot change, right? You have to pray 5 times a day, you have to go Hajj to Mecca, and so on and so forth. But in the space of as-siyasi, then you can use your reasoning to find what is the best solution to solve the problem. If you look at this concept of faragat, you will realize that he basically devised this idea of faragat by looking at one particular episode in the history of the Muslims during the time of the Prophet. That is during the first battle, or what is known as Battle of Badr. Right? In Battle of Badr. In this particular battle, there was this, the Prophet told his companions, okay, let's camp over here, all right? There's an enemy in front of us, we're going to camp over here. But between the Muslims and the enemy, there's a source of water in between, right? So there's this companion of Prophet by the name of Al-Habbab ibn Munzir. He came to the Prophet and he said, "Oh Prophet, was this based on revelation from God, or was it based on what he says as ar-ra'i wal-harb wal-makida?" Means that based on your opinion and war strategy. And the Prophet says, no, it's just based on my opinion. Right. This Al-Habbab bin Munzir, he was a warrior before. He had fought many wars during the time of Jahiliyyah. Yeah, okay. During the time of Jahiliyyah, he had fought many wars. So he has this experience. So he said, according to my opinion, since this is your opinion, based on ar-ra'i, based on what you think is correct, based on my experience, in my opinion, you have to camp beyond the source of water. Means that the source of water will be behind you, and then the opponent is, so that you are going to deny the opponent the source of water. So that was the basis of this faragat, of this concept of faragat by Rashid Ghanouchi. He was saying that, in this, what we call worldly matters, you don't need nas. You don't need to look at nas to say, okay, how to govern a country, how to set up a committee, for example. No, you can use your reason to find what is the best position to take, right? So, in some other scholars like Tariq Ramadan, for example, he used the term as al-muhkamat and mutashabihat. Means that muhkamat, where you can find the text, exact text from the Quran and Hadith with regard to certain ibadah or aqidah, but then they are mutashabihat. They are areas, gray areas where you can use your reasoning to find a solution. Since time is short, I'm going to the last part of my presentation, okay? So what's the way forward? All right? What's the way forward? To me, if you look at the current situation in our country, because we Muslims, we are not like the Catholics. They have a church, the papal, the authority, right? We don't have. We don't have. Even Shaykhul Azhar is a Shaykhul Azhar, right? Even those the servants of the two mosques of Haramain, they are just we don't consider them as someone as infallible, like the great Pope, who has the authority on the Catholics. So because of that, we can't find this single authority, right? So what is because of that, and because of different sects in Islam? You have a Shiite, you have the Sunnis, you have the Ahmadis. There's a few Ahmadis here, and you have the Baha'is, and you have Muslims and non-Muslims, right? You have the Hindus, you have the Christians, you have Buddhists. So what is the best? For everyone to coexist. To me, the solution to this is that to go for a secular state, right? And my idea is that it must be a passive secularism and not assertive secularism. It is not laicite as in France, right? But we are talking more of a passive kind of secularism, like probably like what the AKP is doing now in Turkey. Not the Kemal Atatürk, but the current AKP in Turkey, for example. And because of that, you know, you say that there's going to be what do you call minimum requirement for participation in sphere of civic reason, right? So we say that, you know, both religion and state, they have their boundaries, right? So religion cannot overstep, like what is happening in this country, right? Where they're going to give fatwas, and the fatwas will become laws, and you know they're interfering with the running of the country, right? Which to me is not good. And this idea of secularism also will be able to unite all the different ideologies, whether they're Muslims or non-Muslims, and basically we are able to tolerate different views, right? Different views, irrespective of whether they're Sunnis or they're Shiites, we can tolerate these different views because we do not hold what we call as the truth. Now, Jakim says we have the ultimate truth. It's our definition of Islam, which is true Islam. Others are deviants, right? That is why sister Islams are considered as deviants, right? I do not want to say about IRF, but our books are banned as well, right? So you can this one. So I want to end this by saying, like, just like Anaim, Professor Anaim, Professor James Piscatori quoted him yes 2 nights ago. Like Professor Anaim, who wrote about Islam and secular state, he says that you know, the best state for Muslim to be a true Muslim is a secular state. Why? Because a Muslim would be performing his duties based on his what do you call fearfulness of God, his faithfulness to religion, and because he fear God, not because he fear the authorities. So he performs salat or he performs Friday prayers because he considers it as his obligation, not like what happened in Terengganu recently, right? You are scared of religious authorities, Dina from Terengganu, right? You're scared of religious authorities in Terengganu or in somewhere else that will come and apprehend you for not observing Friday prayer. You're performing Friday prayer because of that. So there's no piety, right? The Prophet says, "At-taqwa hahuna." Piety is here. Taqwa is here. So meaning to say that, to me, if you have this, then a Muslim can live as a true Muslim. Thank you very much.